Good morning. After last night's debate and the discussion of Russia, of course, it actually being a very pertinent issue, something that is hardly being addressed is how Russia is building itself up for war. Now, if you want to go by the playbook that the Clinton campaign wants to tell you, that Putin wants Trump in as president, let's just assume she's right. If that's the case, you're certainly going to see some kind of military action from Russia, not necessarily something directly against the United States, but something provoking some kind of response from the United States. And I don't think even the Democrats could deny that Obama and this administration has been weak foreign policy, especially against Russia. So let's go to this article from the Telegraph. The UK Telegraph, title of this article, and you will find it in the description box, as you always do. Russia taunts U.S. with biggest military offensive since the Cold War. Russia has begun its biggest surface deployment since the end of the Cold War, as it aims to effectively end the war in Syria on the eve of the U.S. election, NATO officials warned last night. The Kremlin is sending the full might of its Northern Fleet and part of the Baltic Fleet to reinforce a final assault on the city of Aleppo in a fortnight, according to Western intelligence. The final bombardment is designed to shore up the Assad regime by wiping out rebels, paving the way for a Russian exit from the civil war. Now, in case you didn't know this, and you should, but because it's not covered in the news, perhaps you don't know this. The United States has wanted Assad, who is the president in Syria, out for several years now, at least for 5 years, really more than that. But they've been actively trying to get Assad out for years, for 5 years. And the fact that the Russians have come in and shored up the Assad regime and is going to allow Assad to stay in there, this is a huge black eye to the Obama administration. This is a huge foreign policy failure. The assault on the city will also serve to highlight U.S. inaction in the run-up to Election Day and may aid Donald Trump. Yesterday, ahead of this morning's debate with Hillary Clinton, his presidential campaign released a letter from defense experts backing plans to increase the size of the U.S. military. Royal Navy warships are due to escort a group of 8 Russian warships, including the country's own Royal Navy warships are due to escort a group of 8 Russian warships, including the country's only aircraft carrier, as they sail past the UK on their way to the Mediterranean. Senior Royal Navy officers expect the task force to sail past the UK as early as Thursday in show of strength, dismissed as, quote, posturing by defense sources. But senior NATO diplomat said the deployment from the Northern Fleet's base near Murmansk would herald a renewed attack in Aleppo. Quote, they are deploying all of the Northern Fleet and much of the Baltic Fleet in the largest surface deployment since the end of the Cold War, unquote, the diplomat said. Quote, this is not a friendly port call. In 2 weeks, we will see a crescendo of air attacks on Aleppo as part of Russia's strategy to declare victory there, unquote. The additional military firepower is designed to drive out or destroy the 8,000 rebels in Aleppo, the only large city still in opposition hands, and to allow Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, to start a withdrawal. Now, this is me, not the article. If you watched this debate last night, again, Clinton wants to bring up this poor little Aleppo child, this poor little Syrian boy. You got some dust on him and a little bit of blood. Folks, this country, the United States of America, is bombing Iraq and Afghanistan, or was, for the last 15 years, into the Stone Age. And yet we're supposed to, it's such propaganda. She's trying to pull your heartstrings by talking about this little kid. She can't even muster anything akin to feeling for this little boy, this 4-year-old boy in Aleppo. You remember the pictures. I did a video about this. It's all propaganda. Anyway, back to the article. An intensified air campaign in eastern Aleppo, where 275,000 people are trapped, would further worsen ties between Moscow and the West, which says the Kremlin may be responsible for war crimes. Mr. Trump has constantly praised Mr. Putin as a strong leader and has promised a closer relationship with Russia if he wins the November 8 U.S. election. He has suggested that, if elected, he would meet the Russian president before the inauguration in January. Folks, most people in this country, I would say, most people, especially the younger ones who don't remember the Soviet Union, have no problem with the idea of sitting down and talking to Russia. I think we should have a problem with one of the candidates for president of the United States constantly stirring the pot against Russia. Look, they may be responsible for this WikiLeaks. They may be responsible for it. But you don't know that. And to stir that pot up, folks, that's not... Most people don't like that. So you're going to think to yourself, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if Hillary Clinton becomes president? Because I can assure you we're going to be at war. That may be what you want. Hey, I live in a community that is basically a war-based economy. So maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's what you want to vote for. But I can promise you that with Hillary Clinton as president and her talking about this no-fly zone in Syria, we're going to be at war. We're going to be at war in more than one place. And we may not be directly against Russia, but we'll do it through proxy, just like we always did in the past when they were still the Soviet Union. Mr. Putin has returned the compliment. Back to the article. Mr. Putin has returned the compliment about Trump. Mr. Putin has returned the compliment, calling the Republican nominee, quote, outstanding and talented, unquote. One of his closest political allies, Vladimir Zarnovsky, urged Americans to vote for Mr. Trump, calling him a, quote, gift to humanity, unquote. Barack Obama said earlier this week that Mr. Trump's admiration of Mr. Putin was, quote, unprecedented in American politics, unquote. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things unprecedented. If Barack Obama had a backbone and he was actually able to stand up to Putin, then, maybe Trump wouldn't be able to use this against you, Clinton. Mr. Obama said, quote, Mr. Trump's continued flattery of Mr. Putin and the degree to which he appears to model many of his policies and approaches to politics on Mr. Putin is out of step with not just what Democrats think, but out of step with what up until the last few months almost every Republican thought, unquote. The Royal Navy has deployed 2 warships to meet the Northern Fleet Group led by carrier Admiral Kazenikov. The frigate HMS Richmond is already escorting the group off the coast of Norway, while the destroyer HMS Duncan was last night on his way. HMS Dragon is due to sail to meet 2 Russian corvettes traveling towards the UK from the direction of Portugal. Photographs of the vessel taken on Monday were released by the Norwegian military. A Norwegian newspaper quoted the head of the Norwegian military intelligence services saying the ship involved, quote, will probably play a role in the deciding battle for Aleppo, unquote. Now, I just said last night that if the Russians truly want Trump in as president, then what they're going to do is they're going to step up some military campaigns. They're going to start some saber rattling, and they're going to scare people into voting for Trump. And, this is the way the world works, folks. I mean, I'm not going to moralize here and say that the Russians are in the wrong for doing things like that. It's in their best interest to keep Assad in Syria. So that's what they're going to do. It's in their best interest, since they've been pushed and pushed and pushed by a feckless leader in President Obama, that they've been pushed by. It is in their best interest to stand back up and to stand up to the United States of America. I would expect that a country would do what's in their best interest, just as the United States of America does. So you can moralize all you want to about Aleppo and this poor little 4-year-old boy, and give in to their propaganda. I'm talking about the American propaganda. Or you can look at this a little more objectively. I guarantee you, and this article supports what I already believed last night after I listened to this debate. I guarantee you that Russia is going to do something within the next 3 weeks if they want Trump in as president, and apparently they do. And it'll probably work. Another thing that very well may happen as a result of this, as part of a result of this, and as part of Trump possibly gaining in the polls, is that you're going to start seeing a slide in Wall Street. This is my prediction. And these things make sense if, let's just call them the powers that be, want Trump in as president. And I still firmly believe that they do. I'll tell you this. Hillary Clinton becomes president. Before she even is sworn in January, we are going to see a major problem with Russia. That I can guarantee you. This is Shindo. If you like what I do, please click like, comment like an adult, share my videos, and subscribe. You have a good Thursday.